and someone like Mark Braverman, who's a non-Zionist, but this struggle and what you think of J Street, and he also, I think everybody should look at an article he put online called Bursting the Bubble of Liberal Zionism, and do you think liberal Zionism is a fig leaf and the very J Street and liberals stand between the right wing, which wouldn't be tolerated, and how important that is, and maybe just anything about the battle in America? Too much to ask.
Yes, I do think this is a decisive battle in this sense, that those who call themselves, or who we might call liberal Zionists, believe that there can be such a thing as a Jewish and democratic state. A state that is a lovely liberal utopia that doesn't violate anyone's rights, but remains Jewish dominated. And I think the present reality and the future trends say that can't be possible. That a Jewish state, a state that defines itself as Jewish, that privileges Jews, that even maintains a Jewish majority, can only exist by violating the rights of Palestinians. That's the reality. I think that for many people in that camp, what was called the two-state solution was this kind of lifeline, this rope that they hung on to. That if only we can get a two-state solution, Israel can be separated from the Palestinians. Yes, it will have a Palestinian minority, but it will have an overwhelming Jewish majority that can legitimize its own privileges and domination through elections. But I think that the reality now, and I think more and more people are realizing this, is the two-state solution, as somebody called it, is political science fiction. The reality is a single state, one entity with apartheid. And separation is not possible. I believe that what the struggle is shifting towards is equal rights. And that's what the BDS call embodies. It doesn't focus on one state or two states. It focuses on the substance, equal rights. Even if you had two states, Israel could not remain a state that privileges one ethno-religious group. You have to dismantle all that. You have to have equality. So I think that is a decisive line. And groups like J Street are trying to hold on to that political science fiction that you can have a two-state solution that doesn't involve massive violations of Palestinian rights. But fewer and fewer people, I think, genuinely believe that, Palestinians and Israelis. So I think it's coming down to this question of where do you stand, not on one state or two states or 10 states, but on the substance of Palestinian rights. And can you back full rights for all Palestinians? Not can you force Palestinians to choose between some rights and others. Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza can have a little state as long as Palestinians inside Israel give up their right to equality, as long as Palestinians who are refugees give up their rights, then Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza can have a few rights. That paradigm is finished. The question now is, can you support all rights for all Palestinians? Because which other group of people have been given a menu and said, here are your human rights, you can pick 3?
J Street help fighting AIPAC? That's a quick follow-up. Is that a help or that's not the issue?
I really think the question is does it help fight AIPAC, but does it help fight for Palestinian rights? And that to me is the only interesting question. Let's see, I want to make sure I'm getting around to all sides of the room. So
regarding the two-state solution, which I think, at least from what I've seen, seems to be something of many more people are approaching as a possibility. I think one of the strongest arguments for that case is the Palestinians' right to their own state, to their own representation at the United Nations. I'm a Puerto Rican. Puerto Ricans have been trying to get their own representation at the United Nations for a long time too. So what I want to ask you is regarding the relationship between Palestinian rights, both in what is technically defined as Israel by Israelis and outside of that, but also for Palestinian national sovereignty and national identity and ownership of that identity as its own standalone thing. How do you feel those either intersect or go against each other?
That's a very good question. And, you know, the paradigm has shifted because I think that for a time, Palestinians did buy into this notion of statehood and national identity through statehood. But here's the thing. Palestinians have a very strong national identity, and they don't have a state. And they've never needed a state like Puerto Ricans. Puerto Rico is not an independent state, and yet Puerto Ricans have the strongest national identity and sense of themselves, which shows that these two don't necessarily go together. I think that, you know, whether you talk about Puerto Rico or you talk about Palestine, you know, when Puerto Ricans debate statehood or independence or maintaining the status quo, I think what they're interested in is the substance. What does it give you? What does it afford you in terms of autonomy? I mean, real autonomy in the sense of the ability to make choices about the destiny of the country and the people. And what has happened with the idea of statehood is, for Palestine, is it has been sucked dry of any content and reduced to this symbolic thing where you can have a blue chair at the United Nations, you can have a flag, you can have a president nobody likes marching up and down. And I think Palestinians are over that, really. I don't see a young generation of Palestinians anywhere getting excited by that. I think that they are much more interested in the substance of their rights. And I think they've become actually very cynical about the idea of statehood and don't see it as a salvation. And remember that statehood is at best, in its ideal form, a solution only for a third of the Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza, and it comes at the expense of the rights of Palestinians in Israel and the refugees. So I think it's a dead paradigm. And I think that the whole hullabaloo about the UN bid last autumn, where the Palestinian Authority went and requested membership at the UN, it was a storm in a teacup. I don't think it generated any real, genuine grassroots enthusiasm among Palestinians. And there were some astroturfing efforts to try and get Palestinians in the United States excited about it, but they weren't. And because at the end of the day, they end up with a chair at the United Nations and no rights, no ability to move, no ability to actually create their own destiny. So, maybe it's a different discourse and a different situation in Puerto Rico. But if it was a question of having independence on 15% of Puerto Rico, maybe people would not be so excited about independence. It's about the whole island.
Thank you.
I'm wondering if you could comment a little bit more on segregation and apartheid in the educational realm against young Palestinians, and how it's different depending on whether you're in the West Bank or Gaza or in what's currently recognized as Israel. So the ways in which it differs depending on which sort of zone you're in.
You have, I'm looking at who's tweeting these pictures. Where's Sam? All right, hi Sam. I'm always watching. It's fine, I don't mind, I like it. So, the educational realm. There are several several educational systems at play. Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza attend two types. Well, in the West Bank, in Gaza, let's say, most children attend United Nations UNRWA schools. And they're often very overcrowded, but they give a decent basic education. One of the things about Palestinian culture, not unique to Palestinian culture, of course, but very strong in Palestinian culture, is a very strong emphasis on education. And this goes from the poorest households to the richest. So people take school very seriously. Exams are very competitive. When the exam results come out at the end of the year, it's a very huge deal. And in the West Bank and Gaza, in the West Bank, you have also UNRWA schools and government schools that make up the educational system. I'm talking now about primary and secondary school. In Israel, you have a separate, what I can only describe as a separate and unequal educational system. You have schools for Jews and schools for Arabs. The funding disparities between them are well documented and vast. So you have a very strong disparity there in education. Now at the higher education level, this is where you see really huge disparities, where there's really very limited opportunities for Palestinians. This huge ambition. You know, every Palestinian parent wants to see their son or daughter go to university. They put a very high premium on higher education. You have several universities in the Gaza Strip. Not enough places or not enough places to meet the demand. Most university students in Gaza, in Palestine, and actually regionally, this is very common. And of course, it goes counter to some of the stereotypes. Most university students are women. In Gaza's Islamic University, 60% of the students are women. You have a couple of universities in the West Bank. There's a very long history of Israeli suppression of universities. Military raids, they shut down all schools and universities for 3 years during the first Intifada in the late 1980s, early 1990s. Palestinians had to teach in basements illegally. It was illegal to teach for 3 years during the Israeli occupation. And of course, we have there's a lot of debate about academic boycott of Israel. One of the aspects of the Palestinian BDS campaign is the call for the academic boycott of Israeli institutions. And that creates a lot of debate, which we can talk about. What we don't talk about so much is the Israeli boycott of Palestinian higher education, which takes many, many forms, of course, not just these sorts of restrictions on universities historically, but the movement restrictions. Palestinian academics and students can't travel abroad easily for conferences. You have many students in Gaza who receive scholarships to go to Europe to study or to other places who can't easily travel and get out. And so there are all these layers of effective Israeli boycott of Palestinian higher education. For Palestinians in Israel, of course, their native language is Arabic. The vast majority will also learn Hebrew. That's not true the other way around. It shows you who is dominant. Israeli Jews can get on fine without learning Arabic. But Palestinians in Israel effectively have to learn Hebrew. Even though Arabic is an official language, but there's no equality. And one of the features of that inequality is that Israel has not permitted an Arabic language university in Israel. So Palestinian citizens of Israel cannot study at the higher education level in their own language. They have to study in Hebrew. Yes, sir.
So you've talked a lot about like the difference in the national narrative